Welcome everybody, this is Vintage Story, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at how to make trail mix. Now this recipe does require two mods, the expanded foods and a culinary artillery. So if you haven't tried those, I highly recommend them. They really expand on the cooking in Vintage Story, which is one of my favorite parts, and if you give them a try, I think it'll be one of yours as well. But we're going to take a look at everything we need to make trail mix, but first I do have a bunch of other videos for Vintage Story, including recipe guides, tutorials, tips and tricks videos, and a couple Let's Play series. So make sure you check the description below for all the helpful links, and let's get into the kitchen. Alright, let's hop inside, and first we're going to take a look at the tools we'll need and then the ingredients. So first thing and most important, we are going to be using the mixing bowl. You can use the power type just as I have, or you can do this manually. Now the recipe also calls for peanuts, which can be cooked, and we'll see the benefits of why we would want to cook them in a short time, but we can use any kind of oven for this, including the vanilla fire clay oven. But as you can see here, I've got a wonderful oven presented by the Stone Bake Oven mod, which I do have a separate video for, so check that out if you're interested in an upgrade to that old tired vanilla style. Now let's get into the ingredients we'll be putting into the mixing bowl. If we open up our inventory, we've got a few different varieties of food here. One thing you'll notice is absent is veggies. There's no way to get the vegetable satiety into the trail mix, so you'll have to do something else. Maybe whip yourself up some high veggie content porridge to supplement the trail mix if you're out traveling. But of course, we are going to be using peanuts as a base. Then the recipe tells us we have the option to use soybeans, or we can actually use cured red meat nuggets. It does have to be the cured variety, and we'll go through that process shortly, but you cannot use raw or cooked nuggets for this. And we can even sprinkle in a little bit of cheese. Either of the varieties will work, blue or cheddar. And we have to use dried fruit of any variety, but it does need to be dried, and I'm going to show you one of the methods of drying fruit as well, so let's get into that next. Alright, let's step into the wine cellar. Here we've got our fruit press and some available barrels, very important. Let's do the dried fruit first, and then we'll look at how to cure meat for anybody who's unaware of those two processes, and then we'll get right back into the kitchen and start mixing up the trail mix. But if we've got our selected fruit in the hotbar, we can simply right click. If we hold shift and right click, it will fill it up completely, so that's pretty handy. Now we just compress the press itself and we wait. Good, now the fully compressed fruit press still needs a few seconds. We can see in the tooltip that the bread juice mash is now dry. And believe it or not, that is what we want out of this process. For making dehydrated fruit, the juice itself is just a byproduct. So we could turn this into wine, syrup, whatever you want to do with it. But we're focused on the mash, believe it or not. Now, typically this stuff is just fed to pigs, but with the mods we've got, we can actually put this into the crafting grid. There it is, and it turns it into dehydrated breadfruit. Now, this stuff has a dryable timer on it, but I'm pretty sure at this point we can toss it in to the mix. We'll try that too. It's just if you really want to preserve it long time, let it dry out completely in a storage vessel or something. But it is a quick and simple process, and it gives you a real purpose for the slush or the byproduct of juicing. So now let's look at how to make some cured red meat. And this process will work with any of the meats, but red meat is the best, so we'll be using that. Obviously, we're going to need some salt to cure and an empty barrel here. Now, because of the stack size of the salt, you can only cure a half a stack of meat at a time, so 32 pieces. But we've got a full stack of salt. It immediately fills up the barrel for us. Then we can put the meat inside there. There it goes. And you can see as long as we've got the right ratio, we can see the tooltip is ready, and we'll seal it up. Now, speaking of the ratio, let me just pull it up in the handbook so you can see that. And there we go. So it's 2 salt for every 1 piece. And again, that's why we're restricted basically to a half a stack of meat for the curing process. But once we've got those 2 things ready to go, we can hop back in the kitchen. Okay, we're here in the kitchen, but before we get into the final stage with the mixing bowls, let's open up the guidebook and go to Cooking 102 Expanded Foods. All the way second from the bottom is the trail mix here, and we can see it says a handful of peanuts in the first slot, regular cooked or kernels. Now the difference here is the satiety, other than the preparation itself, which is very simple. So you could do this raw, but we'll go over the exact numbers here shortly. Second slot is going to be soybeans, or here's where we'd put in the cured meat nuggets that we just saw the preparation for. The next slot is going to be 3 handfuls of dried fruit. So for every 1 portion of peanuts and the others, we will use 3 of the dried fruits. And finally, we can put in a slice of cheddar or blue cheese. It says it's needed in the mixing bowl. There's 8 different combinations, which we're not necessarily going to cover all of those, but there's a vegetarian type, of course, with just beans, I believe. And let's see, any other important ingredients down here? Well, let's just open up the bowls now and take a look at the actual mixing process. Alright, there we go. We've got it all set up. The mixing bowls on the right here and ingredients in the left. Now we've got the visual representation for the recipes in the middle. It's always helpful. And again, there's 2 different kinds. We got the fruity trail mix, which shows an extra abundance of fruit added into the slots. And if we come over here to the cheesy trail mix, you can see, so again, it said there's a lot of different varieties. Then there's the nutty kind, which is extra peanuts. There's also the beanie kind, which is just extra soybeans, which we will probably cycle through. There it is eventually. And you can actually use pickled soybeans too. So it's a very versatile recipe. Again, though, no veggie nutrient here available. But with that said, let's throw in some of our ingredients. Oh, and yeah, the peanuts here, we can see the raw peanuts, they only have 160 satiety, whereas the cooked kind are 175. These still have the shells on. If you put them in the crafting grid and just simply take the shells off, now they have 190 satiety. So that's what we're going to be using for sure. I like to try and maximize my nutrient variety and the satiety of the overall meal itself by just using the best ingredients, such as breadfruit, for instance. But with that said, let's go ahead and make the nutty variety, I think, because I have an abundance of nuts. But I think we can still throw in a little bit of the soybean. Good, very good. And let's try some of the fruit now. Okay, these ratios might be a bit off here, but we'll see, we'll see. Cheese is next. Okay, and how about some more of the nuts? There we go. Okay, so it's working. I see, I see. I suspect it'll just deplete the fruit quicker from the rest of the ingredients. Yeah, so we'll just have to refill that fruit to match each time or as it goes, but that's not a bad deal. Now I should point out, obviously you're only going to be able to probably get 6 portions in each slot. I have a mod called X Skills, which increases the amount I can put into cooking pots and mixing bowls and things like that, but it's also going to bolster the overall satiety of the finished product. So when you make your nutty trail mix, it might be slightly different to what you see here in terms of its numbers, but overall it's still going to be comparable, and it's a good, quick and easy recipe that does offer a variety of stuff. And ultimately, if you really want, you don't have to cook it. You can just throw it in the bowl and head out on the trail. That's of course what it's made for. But I appreciate everybody stopping by for this quick little cooking video. Once again, I have a ton of these on the channel, so make sure you check them out through the playlist link below. And thank you all for joining me today. I will see you on the next one.